Hello, friends. Good afternoon. And today is March 22nd, and today the Navratri in 2023 is beginning. So, to all my Indian friends, very happy Navratri to everyone. And let us start our discussion today. This discussion is about the stamp duty that you keep on paying on various assets that you have. The stamp duty is so popular everywhere in the world that when you buy a property, when you open a locker, or you basically create any asset account, including your demat account, you need to sign up on a stamp paper. So anything that you do with the government, it has to be on a stamp paper. You actually also buy the stamp papers by paying the stamp duty, even for simple agreements, rental agreements. So anything to do with any sort of agreement which involves some sort of registration with the government involves stamp duty. So we know that this is something which is very prevalent, and more so if you are in business, you know exactly what the stamp duty is all about. But have you wondered, why do we pay stamp duty to the government world over, whichever country you go? And when did we start paying the stamp duty to the government? Because if you buy land, it makes sense, but for everything else you need to pay stamp duty. And how this started in the world, and this is the topic of our discussion today. So in the year 1765, today, 22nd March, the Stamp Duty Act was passed. So this is the first time that the stamp duty was, somebody got an idea that, hey, this is a good idea where we can actually make a lot of money, and we can do it in a legitimate way. Legitimately, we can actually ask for tax, and as a state, we can make a lot of money. So this idea was implemented as Stamp Act, and this was implemented first time in the colonies, which were British colonies in those days, in America, 1765. Simply because there was a problem between the colonists who were actually living in America, who actually migrated from Europe to America, and they were the subjects of UK in America. And there was a sort of battle going on, and because of this battle, the UK had to incur certain expenses, and in order to recover those expenses, the then ruling prime minister came up with this idea. His name was Mr. George Greenville, and he actually belonged to a village called Greenville. He was actually born in Greenville. So he actually had other challenges of at that time. There were factions, because parliament was not so strong in those days. There was a monarch also who used to be stronger. Unlike if you look at the UK politics today, there is a prime minister who's very powerful, and although prime minister of today's UK reports into the king, but that is only notional. But back then, the king had a lot of powers. So there were factions in the parliament, and in order to basically defeat his rival faction, and because there were a lot of plague he was getting, that so much money has been spent in controlling the American population, which is basically revolting against them, and they didn't like their rules, regulations, etc. So in order to recover the money, for the first time, the Stamp Duty Act or Stamp Act was passed in the United States, and this was implemented on all colonies. So you know that the United States had multiple colonies. They were ruled by British, and the Stamp Act was passed today on March 22nd. That is why I'm covering this story today, because this is a brainchild of George Greenville, and this was implemented today. And the stamp duty was that whenever you actually get into a property related transaction, you will have to pay to the authorities. And this is how the stamp paper looked like in those days. This was basically a stamp. That is why this is called stamp. The stamp was the state-owned stamp, and whenever you get into a transaction with your neighbor, suppose you buy and sell some property, you got to inform the authorities there, and then you have to basically tell that, hey, Mr. William is selling it to Mr. George, and this is how much I'm paying. You write all of that down, then get the paper stamped by authority, and for doing that stamping, the authorities will charge certain percentage of the transactions. So you got to mention what is your deal size, and that is how. So we know this process. This is very prevalent today. If you are buying or even renting, you have to mention everything in the stamp paper. So when it comes to registration of the property, to maintain the land record, okay, we understand the involvement of the government, but charging a percentage of the sale proceed is started in the 1765, because now the prime minister could go back to the parliament and say that, look, I'm such a smart guy, I started this system, and since the colonists are creating problem for me, I'm going to recover the expense of controlling them, my army cost, etc., from them itself by using this particular act which was implemented. So, this, as I said, this was a 7-year war. They wanted to recover that money using this by some method, by collecting extra tax to basically find people and pay and agree for them to pay tax for something else was very difficult. Whereas this was easy. If you are getting into any property or any asset-based transactions, you got to involve the state. And this is for the very first time this happened, because state used to basically rule. They used to collect taxes in the form of, in those days there were feudal system. But to get into every transaction was not the state was following anywhere in the world. This is the first example. And after this, many things happened. Obviously, people didn't like this act being implemented. And because of this act being implemented, all the colonies rose against the British rule in Americas. And that is called the American Revolution itself, because they fought for their freedom from the British. So, in nutshell, the Stamp Act became the reason that why America is America today. Otherwise, just like Canada is part of Commonwealth. The Prime Minister of Canada reports to the King of Monarch of England. So Canada is not a completely free country, but United States of America is a free country. So if this act was not implemented, which is on March 22nd, probably America would have been like Canada. But because of this act, all the colonists in USA rose against the British rule, and they wanted independence from the British. And this is called the American Revolution. So in nutshell, the Stamp Act actually became a cause for American independence and American Revolution. However, British by chance stumbled upon a very good idea from their point of view, because now they can officially charge money from all the subjects living in their colony. And British had a huge empire. People said once that the British Empire was so large that the sun never set in their empire. Obviously, because they were having so many colonies across the world. So they implemented the Stamp Act in all their colonies. And today, if you look at these countries, most of these countries are English-speaking countries. Most of these countries are Commonwealth, and most of these countries still follow this Stamp Act verbatim. And then there are all other countries, whether they were ruled by British or Germans or independent countries, they saw the benefit in this particular act. And this is a worldwide phenomena now. The Stamp Act is rolled out in some form or the other by all other countries. And because of this act, which was passed on March 22nd, for the very first time, we all today are paying stamp duty on everything to our governments. If this was not implemented in this year 1765, probably we would need to register our assets with a land record, etc. But there was no need to pay extra stamp duty. So This was a good idea that the British stumbled upon, and because of this, we are paying stamp duty. So this act actually not only created a scenario where the citizens have to pay stamp duty, have to necessarily register their properties, and also this particular act became the reason why India became independent in the first place. So friends, if you like this trivia, I'd like to know your thoughts on this. If you have any comments, any suggestions, feel free to send in your comments. And as always, thanks for watching, and I will catch you again in the next one.